It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Okay, school holidays continue. First week of January, done. I don't know if we should be counting down the year already. Maybe let's just enjoy the holidays and stop counting. Sorry, I've created a habit over the years of just counting the weeks and the days, the months as our life disappears before our eyes, and it happens faster and faster as you get older and older. Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the founder of happyfamilies.com.au and the co-host and parenting expert on Channel 9's Parental Guidance, Season 2 coming soon. I'm here with Kylie, my wife, mum to our 6 kids. Kylie, the idea with our summer series is to keep our podcasts under 5 minutes. We've been doing a terrible job of it all week because we're pretty pumped about making this year the best year ever and being the best parents we can be this year. So we've been talking about all kinds of things related to goals and systems and journaling and doing all the things that make life great. Today, we just want to talk about one simple thing, and that is
the power of habit.
Charles Duhigg wrote a book called that a few years ago. James Clear followed that up with Atomic Habits, which is one of your favourites and one of mine as well. So there's a handful of things to talk about when it comes to habits. Ultimately, if you want your family to be happier, if you want to be a better parent, it's about establishing better habits. So what's your habit when your children tick you off? Is it to sigh? Is it to roll your eyes? Is it to yell and shout and scream? Is it to threaten them? Is it to take something off them? Or is your habit to pause, to take a beat?
To get a glass of water.
Yes, and whatever else you need as well to pull it together. Is your habit to lean in, to explore rather than explode, to understand, not reprimand, to get curious, not furious? If you can do those things, then you're probably well on the path to a happier family and better parenting. But how do you create the habit? That's what we want to talk about over the next couple of minutes of this podcast, and we're going to keep it really brief.
When I was reading Atomic Habits last year, one of the things that stood out to me was just how minuscule the changes need to be
to create change over time.
Yeah, so for me, when I look at where the gaps are in my life, the things that I want to change, I feel like I have to do a whole revolution. I have to change everything to be able to, create the lifestyle that I want.
Yeah.
And the reason James calls his book Atomic Habits is because he's suggesting that the changes that we actually need to make are like these tiny little tweaks.
So that ties in with Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect. The idea that if you do that tiny little thing, that tiny little tweak consistently day in and day out, that over time the results compound. And if you look not 3 minutes or 3 hours or 3 days down the track, but 3 years or even 3 decades down the track, that's where you see the change.
The biggest challenge for most of us, I think, is that it's so hard to keep doing what we're doing when we don't feel like we're getting the change that we want.
Right, the instant reward. I've been to the gym 3 days in a row. Why haven't I lost the 12 kilos I'm trying to lose?
I've worked really, really hard.
Yeah.
And you're telling me I have to wait 3 years before I'm going to actually see the results that I want?
Delayed gratification. It's a killer.
It's hard.
Yeah. So that reminds me, as you say that, of a couple of things that I think are really worth emphasizing. The first is something that I share when I'm talking to high-performance teams in corporations and in schools, when I'm talking to adults about well-being sort of stuff, and I'll highlight that dieting for a day won't change your life. Going to the gym for a day won't change your life. Telling your wife or husband that you love them for a day won't change your marriage. But if you do this stuff every single day, so I guess when I think about our marriage together, I was going to say your marriage to me, but it's our marriage to one another. The marriage that we have isn't what it is because one day I got it right or one day you got it right. It's because consistently for 24 years now, 25 years. Is it 20? It's 25 years this year. No, it's 24 years. Hang on. I always get the year mixed up. 1998? It's 1998. 25 years. 25 years. I can't believe it. This year.
It's a big milestone this year.
It's a big one. Wow. For 25 years, we have been consistent in doing the small things, reaching out and touching each other when we walk past, looking one another in the eyes, giving each other kisses regularly. It's about making the consistent investment. I think it was 1911,
We haven't been married that long.
No. In 1911, Robert Falcon Scott and Roald Amundsen were essentially in a race to the South Pole, and they had different strategies, different tactics, different ways of getting there. Scott was the Englishman trying to do a whole lot of things for science foundations and sponsors, and he had a really tough agenda, and so he was right under the pump. And when the weather was good, they would go a million miles an hour, do as much as they could, and then they'd just collapse. And if the weather was bad, then obviously they just hunkered down. But Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian, what he would do is do 20 miles every single day. So it's a 3,000 kilometre round trip. And what Amundsen did was every day he did his 30 Ks. Took him 100 days, 99 days in fact, to do it, because he got up and he just did the work every single day. So as a parent, what is the work? What's the habit? What's the system that you can create? What's your 20-mile march?
Honestly, when you say it, it seems like it's too easy. It actually seems like it's too easy, and therefore it's not going to work.
It's kind of like writing a book, though. If I get up every day and I write a certain number of words, within a couple of months, the book is written. I've got to do all the research. I've got to do all the planning, but just writing those words every day, and suddenly you've written a book, an entire book that you've written. It's phenomenal how that works. Parenting's the same. It's just that the metrics aren't quite as obvious. Like, you can't get up and run 5Ks every day and say, all right, I'm going to be a good parent because I ran my 5Ks. But that 5K run, metaphorically, is when the kids are angry, I don't shout. Or when I need to talk to my children, I walk into the room and I meet their eyes. Or, I mean, pick your thing. Whatever it is that you want to change, it's about getting it right today, but also tomorrow and also the day after, and getting it right every single flipping day for 20 years until they finally are adults. And you've gotten it right consistently. It's that ongoing investment, creating the habit. That's how we make our families function. That's how we become better parents.
I guess at the heart of all of that is just it's the discipline that it takes us to do that, because some days it's easy, right?
Okay. Well,
some days it's really easy to show up, and other days it's not. And on those days, a rule that I love to remember is to not miss 2 days in a row.
Oh, great. Well, I was going to say, give me some strategies. I've got a handful as well, but that's a perfect one. So if I've made a commitment, and I'll just stick with the don't yell at the kids idea as the, or don't smack the kids, or don't, whatever it is, I'm going to stop doing this thing. What you want to do is make that the commitment. And if you blow it, just don't blow it 2 days in a row. Reinstate the commitment. The other thing that you can do, though, is you can have a commitment device. This is one of my favorites. So a commitment device is essentially that thing that makes things happen. For me, if I want to exercise, my commitment device is my friends. I don't exercise otherwise. I want that social thing. For our daughters, as we mentioned on the podcast yesterday, they're not going to run unless they've got me running alongside them, my involvement. That's the commitment device. Now, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's a thing, it's a decision that you've made that if I do this, I get that, or whatever it might be, but absolutely essential. There's probably a couple of other things that we could do, though, to really make these habits stick.
James Clear talks about stacking habits.
Oh, yeah.
And this was actually really useful for me. So if there is something that I'm already doing and it's just habitual that I do, I don't even have to think about it.
So you're already brushing your teeth. You might as well add flossing to the...
You add something else to it.
Yeah.
So it has to kind of make sense that you do it. So for me, during wintertime, I actually forget to drink.
Right.
Like, I just stop drinking.
Yep.
And I get to the end of the day and I've got the worst headache in the world. And so I decided to stack the habit of walking into the kitchen. How many times do you walk into the kitchen every day?
Lots.
A lot.
Yeah.
If you're working from home, or you live, you're at home during the day. And so I just decided that every time I walked into the kitchen, I would take a drink of water. I didn't tell myself that I had to drink a whole cup or whatever. It was just every time I came into the kitchen, I would have water. And I went from pretty much drinking no water during the day to doing 2.5 litres without even thinking about it.
So an easy parenting corollary is to say, every time I walk into a room that one of my children are in, I'm going to call out their name and smile at them and tell them that I love them. Or I'm going to reach out and squeeze their elbow, or acknowledge them in some positive and kind way. That's the idea. That's that idea of habit stacking. The child becomes the commitment device as well. You've got those things. At the very core of it, and we need to wrap this up, but at the very core of it, I think that if we want to create better habits, better systems, it's one thing to come up with all these techniques and strategies and to have your 20-mile march and make sure you're doing that thing day in, day out consistently. But what you really want is to have a sense of identity around it. This is the kind of person I am. Because fit people exercise every day or most days. They very rarely miss 2 in a row. They might miss 1 now and then. And it's the same with parents who are really striving to build that great relationship with their kids. They're going to get it wrong every now and again. We all do. But if we get it wrong now, we don't get it wrong again tomorrow. We make sure we pull it together for tomorrow. And we maintain that intention because we are that kind of person. We really hope this has been helpful. Thanks so much for listening to our Happy Families summer series on the Happy Families podcast. Back again on Monday. We're going to be focusing on how to get the most out of summer and holidays with the kids. That's on the Happy Families podcast.